Andy from Travers Bay Farms tells us why it's so important to make sure that you're winning awards when you have a consumable products to win shelf space at the grocery store. Welcome back, everybody, to today's episode of Clicks and Bricks. My name is Ken. Today we have Andy LaPointe from Travers Bay Farms with us. But before we jump into that, if you want to join my text line community, my number is 314-370-2871. I'll never try to sell you anything on that text line, but I will give you crypto advice, business tips and tricks. It's like 1 or 2 text messages a month, no big deal. Just send me any question you have about business or technology, and I will give you an unbiased opinion answer on that topic. How are you doing today, Andy?
Hi, Ken. Thank you very much for having me on. I certainly appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us today. We're super excited to hear your story. Before we jump into your founder story, can you just tell us a little bit about Travers Bay Farms? What is it you do, and what makes your company special and stand out from the others?
Well, thank you very much. Travers Bay Farms, we're a health and wellness company based in northern Michigan. And since 2000, we started in 2001, but since 2009, we've won over 35 national food awards at America's largest and most competitive food competitions. And we have a whole line of gourmet food products, including nationally award-winning salsa, barbecue sauce, as well as salad dressings. Then we have a complimentary line of natural dietary supplements like cherry capsules, good for joint pain, blueberries, good for joint health, brain health, pomegranate, good for heart health. So we basically focus on all natural solutions, all natural products made with fruit.
Fantastic. So I want to get into the founder story, but you said something really interesting to me right there is you won these awards. If you're going to have a business that sells products and you're looking for shelf space in grocery stores and Whole Foods and things like that, how important are those awards in landing those bigger deals?
The benefit about having a consumable product is, number one, either people are going to like it or they're not going to like it. And one of the ways to get shelf space, one of the ways to, of course, prove that how good your product is without people tasting it is by winning local, regional, or national awards. And that's one of the strategies that we followed here at Travers Bay Farms. We've entered into the Scovie Awards, which is actually America's largest spicy food competition. So anybody with a consumable product that has jalapenos in it, from mild jalapeno all the way up to ghost peppers, you can enter it into the Scovie Awards. Then we also entered America's Best Natural Food Competition, which is one of the other generic or all encompassing food competition. But to answer your question, it's very important, especially for a consumable, because we can go to a buyer, they like the label, they like the ingredients, but what does it taste like? And without them tasting it, they're more willing to take a risk, so to speak, of taking on a new product and get it onto the shelf, because we are a nationally award-winning product.
So all the time you see these products on the shelves, you're like, oh, I like that flavor, but I've never tasted that brand, and you have no awards with it, so you kind of just walk away. So basically what I'm saying is that referrals are huge across the board in any industry, but for this stuff that has taste and consumables, if you can get those awards, it's that one little tick above. So, and do you put that on your marketing budget whenever you go to these award shows?
Yes.
Considered just a marketing expense. So, and it's a good time doing those shows, right? So it's a whole lot of fun. So if you have any of those consumables, I would say right away, start going to those shows as soon as possible. It's huge differentiator in your product. So fantastic. I think that's a brilliant way to market your product. And I think a lot of startups need that advice if they're trying to get into that market. So can you tell us, you have a little bit of a different story on your founding. You and your wife are partners, correct?
That is correct.
Are you the only 2 partners in the company, or do you have other outside investors as well?
No, fortunately, we were able to start basically shoestring it like most other businesses.
Yep.
And so, no, we don't have any outside capital, no other partners other than my wife and I. We have great employees, of course. But the nice thing about our company is, number one, we're able to keep it nimble. Number two, my wife and I work together 24 hours a day, which is good and bad. But the nice thing about that is we're able to play to each other's strengths, so to speak, and most importantly, complement each other's strengths and grow the business for the benefit of the business and the brand, as well as for the benefit of our employees and for our customers on continually able to offer those products at very reasonable prices.
Fantastic. So Can you tell us a little bit about that founding story? So, and you kept your corporate America job for the first several years of the company, and then decided to, leave corporate America and come on full time when the time was right. Can you tell us a little bit about that story about, in the beginning years, right, that founding story, how you and your wife decided that, hey, we're going to do this, and then skip way ahead to, what the transition was like, leaving corporate America, coming in, and if there's any specific advice or tips on either one of those, because those are both critical moments in the company, right? Because they're big decisions for you, your family, all your employees, and I think there's a lot of good advice in there for anybody that's in either one of those positions.
And yeah, my story is a little bit different, so to speak. I mean, I grew up in the food business. I had 4 uncles that were pizza franchisees for one of the largest pizza franchisees in the United States. Actually, one of my uncles knew the founder. He and the founder of the pizza franchise were actually jockeys at the Detroit Race Club when they were 14 years old. So I grew up in food. And so basically from 14 to about 18, I grew up in food. After I graduated college, fortunately, my parents didn't pressure me into staying into the food business or anything like that. So like anyone at 18, 19 years old, you want to go out into the world and do your own thing. So what I did is I went to college, earned a finance degree from Eastern Michigan University. After college, I paid my way through college selling real estate. A couple of years after I graduated college, I changed career and became an investment advisor. So basically from 1994 all the way up to 2009, I was a registered investment advisor, mutual fund wholesaler, where basically I traveled 150 nights per year, 75,000 airline miles per year for the last 10, 12 years of my career in the corporate world. I left the corporate world in 2009. But the real transitional period, as you mentioned, or asked me to go into a little bit more detail, Ken, is what made me leave the corporate world to start our own business. And being in the financial world, I was actually in the World Trade Centers about 2 weeks before 9/11. The company I was working for, we had headquarters right down there on Avenues of America. I had a friend of mine who was dating somebody in the towers. Fortunately, she made it out. But September 11th, what really changed me as an individual, as a father, as a professional, because any one of us watching this podcast, listening to this, we could have been on those planes. And the financial services industry, just like most industries, it's a very, very small industry. So that's what really changed me. And what really happened, I was down in Covington, Kentucky on the morning of September 11th. I still remember sitting in an advisor's office waiting for a 9:15 meeting, and we all saw what transpired on the television screen. So after that transpired, number one, I flew down to Covington, Kentucky, flew into Cincinnati. I had a rental car. Of course, you couldn't get back on a plane. They shut the phones down. So in essence, I got a hold of the rental car company and said, I can't fly back. I'm going to take the rental car, drive from Covington, Kentucky, which is about 8.5, 9-hour drive, all the way to northern Michigan. And during that time from Covington, Kentucky to northern Michigan, there was no phones. You couldn't reach anybody. We didn't know what was going on. I took a step back and said, you know what? As I mentioned before, anyone could have been on those planes. So I need to reevaluate what I'm doing. I need to reevaluate for my family, my profession, my career. And it was really during that 8.5, 9-hour drive that I started to evaluate everything that was near and dear to my heart, number one. And number two, how can I transition out from the corporate world to self-employed? And what I did is I went back and looked at my experiences, and other than loving finances, other than loving real estate, other than loving business itself, I love food. So that was the catalyst of going from the corporate world back to food. I basically relied on what I was doing when I was younger as a teenager.
Phenomenal story. It was a rough time. I mean, I remember we were in startup mode at that time too, and it was every day was hustle and bustle, but that day was standing around the screen, silence, right? So it was definitely a different thing and a tough time for everybody. And, it was a lot of transition right after that as well. So, but taking a step way back we had a little bit of a pre-interview, and you talked a little bit about also so the transition, absolutely do what you love, get out of corporate America if it's not for you. If it's for you, stay there, right? But if it's not, get out. when we were talking earlier, when you decided to create the company, like, so there was also some, you and your wife maybe not have been the healthiest people on the planet at that time. So you were trying to figure out solutions for yourself. And as you're finding solutions for yourself, you're creating these recipes and products too, right? So like the birth of that, how did that, what was the spark that said, this is what we're going to do, right? You made the decision, I'm not going to do corporate America anymore, right? I'm going to go back into food. And you found, which is a pretty unique niche of, pure salsas, pure supplements, right? Because I think right now everybody's trying to sell the one pill that fixes everything. And you're saying, no, that's not the way it goes. So there's a amount of education there. There had to have been some kind of motivation or possession that said, this is my product. This is what I'm going to take to market. This is how we're going to change the world. This is going to be our legacy. What was that decision like?
Yeah, that decision was even more crucial than starting the business, because anyone can start a business, but what are you going to start a business with? And fortunately, growing up, as I mentioned earlier, I had some uncles as a pizza franchisees, 4 of them, matter of fact. A lot of it goes back to my grandmother. And my grandmother's mother was from the Ojibwe tribe in Quebec. And I still remember when I was 7, 8, 9 years old, sitting on my grandmother's porch. They lived on about 10 acres property between my grandmother's house and one of my uncle's house, who was the pizza franchisee. And we had a family garden there. So on Sunday afternoon, we'd go over to my grandmother's and we'd go out to the garden and we'd pick stuff. And truthfully, we'd make salsa, we'd make whatever we could from the garden. But today it tastes a lot better, because back when we were 10 and 12 years old, there was actually pieces of dirt in the salsa. But being kids, you still ate it. But now we don't. I still remember sitting on my grandmother's.
There's a little bit of flavor in that dirt.
Exactly, it's nutrition. A little bit of crunch. But sitting on my grandmother's porch, I remember as she was getting a little bit older, my mom and some of my aunts would go over there and she would verbally tell us the family recipes. I mean, it'd be the kielbasa, the pigs in a blanket, all the family recipes that we grew up on. And of course, with her coming from the Native American background, it was all verbal, the verbal relationship, the verbal stories from generation to generation. So a lot of those recipes, the concepts of the recipes, hey, a cherry salsa, because we made it at grandmother's, a raspberry salsa, we made it at grandmother's, we had a blueberry. So not the recipes themselves specifically, but the whole idea were pulled from that experience. And you know what? It's a very unique, wholesome, all natural flavor, all natural product. So that's how a lot of these ideas, a lot of these recipes came to fruition, is, going back and remember my mom and my aunts writing down the recipes that my grandmother, with her broken English, because she was French Canadian, broken English, that she would tell us.
Fantastic. So I wouldn't call my palate refined by far. It's probably more of a gutter palate. But what's the difference between like a strawberry salsa and a strawberry jam? Because to me that would be the same thing, and maybe that's just my lack of culture.
From the strawberry salsa, and what was the other one? I apologize.
And the strawberry jam. Like, what's the difference between that on the fruit side?
Gotcha. Well, the nice thing about, for example, the salsa, the jalapeno is what makes the salsa spicy. So you have your cherries, or excuse me, your strawberries. In this example, you have your peppers, you have your onions, you have your jalapenos, you have your tomatoes. So we really make the chunky salsa, where you can actually take a tortilla chips, dip it in, and you have the big chunks of the cherries, if it's a cherry salsa, or the peaches or the mango salsa. So you really get that full flavor. So what really makes a salsa is the jalapeno. And that can be anywhere from a mild jalapeno all the way up to a ghost pepper, which we don't make because that just destroys the palate after the sniff, basically. But a jam, it's made with more sugar. And the nice thing about a jam is it's more breakfast orientated because it's sweeter. You have a lot of sugar in there, but you still have that underlying fruit, as the strawberry, as you mentioned. And then you have a strawberry preserve, which has the preserve is the bigger chunks of fruit. A jam and a spread are basically like table butters, where you can spread it out. There's really no chunks in it from that standpoint. So and that's why we kind of approach it from, breakfast. We do offer a cherry jam, a cherry preserve. all the way to a salsa, enjoy with dinner, enjoy with snacks, as well as a breakfast burrito. A lot of folks are enjoying spicier food with a breakfast burrito, an egg, a little bit of cherry salsa on top of it, cheddar cheese stored in a microwave.
So the real difference is the spice level, right? So sweet versus heat is the core, and then chunkiness level from there. Okay.
Exactly. Yep.
I guess I didn't know that salsa that all salsa had a jalapeno in it or some kind of heat.
Yep, that's what makes it hot. And then you have the cilantro in it and stuff like that. But that's pretty much the differentiator. We also make pepper jelly, which has jalapeno in it as well. Basically take the same strawberry jam, add some jalapeno in it, and the pepper jelly, that's what you have usually in the holidays if you put it over cream cheese, with crackers. Sometimes it's colored green or red. That's the pepper jelly. But ours is actually, we have a cherry pepper jelly, a strawberry pepper jelly, as well as a red raspberry pepper jelly, which again, we're going with that entire fruit theme.
They're coming up, so these are great holiday gifts, right? Fantastic. Yep. I think we have an offer for our listeners, right? So, Christmas is right around the corner. If you're looking for holiday gifts, can you tell us a little bit about your offer that you'd like to give our listeners today?
Yeah, and I appreciate everyone taking their time out to watch this video, to listen to the podcast, and a $5 offer off of no matter what you order. So visit our website, Travers Bay Farms, which is at the bottom of the screen, and the offer code is podcast, uppercase, and then it's a $5 offer off of anything that you purchase. From that standpoint. And the nice thing about it is we do offer free shipping. You order 8 items or more, get a chance to sample all of our products, mix and match. When you go to the website, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, we have that, and it make great gifts as well. Thanks you for bringing that up.
Fantastic. Yeah. So on this one, we had it 5%. It's actually $5 off. $5 off anything in the cart and free shipping. Get your orders in for holiday. I know that the post office is a little jammed up right now, so get those orders in quick if you want those gifts to come out in time. So, fantastic. So, on Clicks and Bricks, we like to talk about, because we talk to a lot of founders and business owners, and adversity and thriving are 2 key parts of, I believe, of the mindset that all business owners need to have to get anywhere in life. Without those 2 mindsets, they're going to be in a lot of trouble. So, can you tell us, do you have any stories of adversity that you overcome? Obviously, your 9/11 story is traumatizing and life changing for that matter, but that was a catalyst to get you started and get you, for lack of better terms, woke and said, hey, I need to go do this in my life, right? I need to own my life and do it. But through that transition, there were times that had to have been struggling. Do you have tips or tricks on how you overcome those struggles when just going back to corporate America might seem enticing for moments in time, right? So what do you do to keep your mindset straight and keep those negative things away?
Well, and that's the challenge I think every entrepreneur has, no matter what niche you're in, no matter what business you're in. Doesn't matter if you're a startup or it doesn't matter if you've been in a business for 20 years. Because the biggest challenge an entrepreneur can have is how do you overcome adversities which come at us every single day? And for example, when we first started, Ken, as you mentioned earlier, we have a store product that what we sell direct to the customer. We have a lot of other distribution channels, but when you have a consumable product, the first goal is to, of course, get it into stores, get it on the store shelf where people can walk by, they can pull it off and put it in the shopping cart, which is great. Being a startup company, as we mentioned earlier, and that was the benefit of winning the awards, the buyers don't know who we are, number 1. They don't know if we're going to sell, number 2. And number 3, they don't want any more hassles. They already have vendors they've been working with. So basically, the very first challenge that we had to overcome is how in the world are we going to get our product out into the universe? How are we going to get it out to the marketplace? And there was 2 things that we did. The first thing that we did is went to all the store buyers and they said, no, we don't want to talk to you for the reasons I just mentioned. So that took about 4 to 5 to 6 months. As I was still in the corporate world, I was still doing calls and stuff like that. But basically what I did, this is Michigan. Here is Detroit, and we are up here. So the first thing we did is after about 4 to 6 months of basically having our teeth kicked in, my wife and I said, you know what? We are going to take this part of Michigan and cut it off. We're not interested in distributing our products to the upper northwestern part of Michigan, because why are we going to get our teeth kicked in? Buyers are going to tell us no. So we basically made a decision and said, you know what? Let all of our competitors, old and new, fight over those, those stores in that northwest quadrant of Michigan. We'll take the rest of the world. So what we did is we went to distributors out of Chicago, distributors out of Detroit, distributors out of Cincinnati, built up our direct-to-the-consumer online business, as well as our international business, not even worrying about the northwest quadrant of Michigan. Now, since 2001, we started, we're distributed in a number of stores in northwest lower Michigan. But at first, we could either let it defeat us and say, oh, we can't get distribution. What are we going to do? Let's do the same thing everyone else does. Just keep hitting it. But you can't do that because money loves speed. Money loves speed. The faster you move, the more opportunity you have. But as IBM, the CEO of IBM, I think it was Tom Watson, who said, if you want to succeed faster, you have to double the rate of your failure. So for us, it's like, you know what? I'm just interested in making money, distributing my product, and getting it to the world. So why am I going to fight the battle everyone else? Think outside the box and approach it from a different area. And most importantly, that allowed us to break through and create the cash flow we need. And that was just one strategy.
Well, if failure is any measure of success, I should be wildly successful. So absolutely. I like that quote. I like to embrace failure. And at the end of the day, the only real failure is quitting and not trying anymore, right? So we use that word failure, and it's just losses in the game, right? They're shortcomings, they're learning experiences is how you should really look at your failures. And those failures are customers hanging up on you, or potential clients hanging up on you, sales calls, going to trade shows that just are exhausting and you get no leads from. But you never know, the next one's you change a little bit, and like I cannot tell you the importance of just keep changing little things over time. Change it, measure it, change it, measure it, change it, measure it. And then there are times you make literally one or two changes, and I'm talking about changes as small as a carriage return on an email to make it 2 lines instead of one, can literally change everything in your game, right? So, just keep working, keep changing things, but change it and measure it, change it and measure it. And then when you find something that works, keep pouring the gas on that. So, fantastic. I love that phrase. If you want to get successful faster, double your rate of failure. I'm taking that one as well. I'll have to look up where the quote actually came from. So
that was Tom. I think it's Tom Watson. He was the CEO of IBM in the 70s or 80s.
Okay.
Being in the corporate world, I listen to Brian Tracy, Dennis Waitley, all those, those old school sales guys and training guys, Wayne Dyer. From that standpoint, but some of those quotes just stick with you, and that's one that does.
Absolutely. So, and then obviously the mindset for overcoming adversity is a different mindset for thriving, right? Really, when you are successful, and I like to celebrate my wins, and I celebrate my wins a little too much, and I don't get back to work fast enough, right? I'm getting better at doing that, but I find it hard sometimes whenever I have a big win or I just overcame some kind of really big adversity, if that's, a new SBA loan or legal case or something like that, to get back in that mindset of running again, right? Because you just got in this whole defense mode and you got to get back in this offense mode. And that's a pretty big change in your mindset. Do you have any tips or tricks for our audience on how you make that change from adversity to thriving?
Yeah, and that's from doing that allows you to, number one, not only maintain your momentum, as well as keep moving forward in the direction that you want. And basically, what I do is after we've overcome an adversity, for example, or achieved something very successful, is truthfully, I take a half a day off. Basically just to celebrate, just to take a step back and, go out to dinner or, sit on a deck and watch the sunset or whatever it is. Because number one, I think we have to celebrate our wins. And the reason we have to celebrate our wins, because that's why we do what we do. We love closing deals, that's not so much closing deals. It's so much about helping the customer discover an undiscovered product, helping a customer or a client achieve their goals individually, And approaching as a true consultant, no matter what business you're in, it's not about us. Our success, our income solely relies on as many solutions that we can help our customers solve. Because the more money we make, that means the more value add we are to our customers. So basically, what I do, take a half a day off, 3/4 a day off from that standpoint. But number two is every single Sunday, from 2 to 3 or 4 to 5, whatever it is, I take a look at what I accomplished over the previous week, what I didn't accomplish, and what I want to accomplish over the coming week, and then the next 30 days. So what that does, that allows me to celebrate my successes. And number two, it kind of gets me back on track. I said, you know what? I feel really good about closing this deal, or I feel like crap because I didn't close that deal, but I have 2 or 3 other things in the pipeline. What did I learn, and how can I keep my momentum forward? Because again, money loves speed. If we keep that momentum going, if you keep moving forward faster, money always loves speed.
So one tip is celebrate the win in a meaningful way, right? I see it so often, and this happens to me a lot. Like, I'll have a big win, like a massive win, and like while I'm talking to my shareholders, I'll have one shareholder goes, "Fantastic job. What's next?" And I would say, "Well, we're going to go to the bar and we're going to have a good time," right? But it's no. So give yourself those couple of hours to really celebrate it in a meaningful way, right? Like, yes, I won that deal, and really, really celebrate it, but don't go too far, right? Don't take the rest of the month off. Like, say, okay, if I win a big deal, you can even put a time frame on it. Like, for every $1,000 of new revenue I bring in, I'm going to celebrate for an hour and a happy hour or something like that, right? So if you bring in a $10,000 deal, you know that we're going to take off the next 10 Fridays an hour early, right? Do a happy hour with the team. So, or bring, order pizza or something like that. So you're celebrating that kind of regularly thing. So I think that's fantastic news. And then, so what would you call it? Reflection Sundays? Take some time to reflect and really, do your goal setting or milestone setting, however you feel. Whatever you like better.
That's correct. And the nice thing about doing that is because, for me, Sunday is a relaxation day, so to speak, because I can forget everything. I turn the phone off. It's basically just spend time with my wife and family. But most importantly, it allows the calmness to come back in, because if we're always, quote unquote, running, you're always scattered. And if you're always scattered, you don't know what direction to go into. So for me personally, it's helped me to reset on that Sunday, because if you do it once a month, you get lost the other 29 days. Right. If you do it once a day, that's kind of silly because you got stuff to do. So for me, it's every Sunday, and that's a relaxation day. So
right. And I like that. So I don't do the Sundays, but I do every day. And I don't do a full reflection. I do just 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes before bed, just to clear my mind. Just literally take that time. Sometimes it's 10 minutes before and after, but just take that time, lay down, relax, quiet room, and just no music, no nothing, just relax and clear your head. I think it's important to do for anybody. If you want to do it weekly, daily, whatever it is, but you have to take that time to get into a calm state where your body is just going to destroy itself, and your mind will just spin and spin and spin, and you'll be in trouble eventually. So fantastic. Now, obviously, you have a lot of different product lines. You've got your own farm, right? And you grow some of your own produce. Is that correct?
We have some raspberry canes, and the nice thing about raspberry canes, it's a big volume, but it's a small footprint.
Okay. So you do produce some of your own fruit or raspberries.
Yep,
you package some of your own products, but then you also co-pack and you co-op some of your product as well, right? So can you give the audience just a little bit of knowledge about, the difference in all 4 of those approaches? So you got co-packing and packing in-house, and then you've got co-op farm and home farm, right? So you have all 4 of them. So you've really got a pretty defensible position with any kind of outcome. Your farm dies, you've got that. Your co-op goes out, you've got your own farm, right? Your packing company quits, you've got your own packing. So you've really set up a situation that's highly redundant and pretty versatile that almost gets you through almost any kind of change in the marketplace. Does that seem pretty accurate?
That's spot on. And that's how we built the business. Number one is we wanted to leverage all the assets. And I'll get into that a little bit more when I mention assets, but also we wanted to leverage the folks that we're working with, our relationships. And as you mentioned, Ken, if something happens to one, we can quickly pivot to another. And relationships, especially today, is more important than anything else. Because if your building burns down, you can start up tomorrow with your employees. And we've got some excellent employees here at Travers Bay Farms. So it's about the relationship. And secondarily, we always have a primary supplier, for example, and a secondary supplier. And the reason we have a primary and secondary supplier is if we buy, 60 to 70% of all of our jars or whatever from a primary provider, and then we also buy 30 to 40% or whatever the percentage is from our secondary provider. And number one, that allows us to have a relationship with two different sources. They each know we have another provider, but more importantly, it helps us manage the risk of our business, because if one provider goes out of business, they have a back order, especially with COVID, which has been crazy as heck. We've been able to rely on our providers, sometimes a second provider, sometimes even our third tier provider for some instances, on allowing us to continue to run our business. So we approach it as, number one, building relationships with as many different silos, so to speak. And then number two, keeping that open communication. And then back to your question is, what's the difference between the each? For example, so we live in northern Michigan. We're on the 45th parallel north, and that's halfway between the equator and halfway between the North Pole. Basically, the Goldilocks climate of the entire globe, because that 45th parallel runs across northern Michigan, northern Wisconsin, where they also grow cherries, northern Washington, where the Washington apples come from, northern New York, where the great New York apples come from, but it also wraps around to northern France, where they grow the grapes, which goes into the champagne, some of the best in the world. So the benefit about where we're at, we're able to work with the co-ops, the cherry co-ops, the blueberry co-ops, even though we don't have the thousands and hundreds of thousands of acres. We're able to buy from those co-ops. So we can basically say, you know what, my cherries come from right down here, my blueberries come from here. Even though we don't do it here at Travers Bay Farms, we're able to leverage our relationships, and most importantly, leverage our assets, as I mentioned earlier, that we have specifically, and everyone listening, watching this video has specific assets which are unique to them, their relationships with other people, their location that they're in, their experiences. Those are the assets. So if you really take a step back and say, you know what, this is what I want to do. I'm starting here. I want to go here. Can I do all of it? No, no one can do all of it. No one can be an expert in everything. But most importantly, take time out and say, okay, what assets can I pull from to help me reach my end goal as a business owner, as a father, and a lifestyle that I want to create for myself and my family.
Right. So in all business, there's a defense and an offense section of your business. And defense is wildly important. Two critical things that you always have to defend. One is your position in the marketplace has to be defendable. The easiest way to do that is by having a unique product that caters to a very specific demographic. If your differentiator is price, you've already lost. You just don't know it yet if you're still in business. The second thing that you need to really make sure that you can defend is your supply chain, right? And in this case, to defend that supply chain, what you've done is you've used the diversification method, right? So you're not using just one supply chain. This is wildly important in all business to defend your supply chain. So in IT, we use don't be in one provider, right? Don't have one IT provider. Have two IT providers, because companies can change direction, right, as a whole. So even your co-packers, you have different co-packers that you can move from one co-packer to the next, a backup co-packer in case something happens. You got backup farms in place, because if you know anything about engineering, they say one is none and two is one, right? And that's the name of the game, because if you only have your entire business is dependent on one supplier, then you do not have a defensible position. And eventually that supplier is just going to take you out of the market, right? Or somebody with a better relationship to that person could take you out of the market very easily. So love that advice. Thank you so much for it. As we're wrapping up this show, try to bust out our crystal balls. As entrepreneurs and business owners, we have to constantly be thinking about what's tomorrow, right? Wayne Gretzky says, don't go where the puck is, go where the puck's going to be. So if we can really polish that crystal ball and look into the future of what technology is obviously changing the world at breakneck speeds right now, what do you see in your industry, how technology is going to change that 1, 5, 10 years out from now?
Well, that's as you mentioned, that's the crystal ball, and that's where our individual experience comes in. That's where our relationships come in with our vendors, where we can kind of lean on them and say, hey, what do you think is going to happen over the next 5, 10, 12 years? So if we don't have that expertise in-house or from our own experience, you have vendors that you can work with, or excuse me, the vendors you have been working with, they're more than willing to offer their expertise to help guide you from a consumable product, from a product that people consume. And number two, since I started my investment advisory career in the early 90s, I basically was very familiar with the internet craze of the 90s. So I was fortunate and able to be involved in that from the investment advisory standpoint. But also going forward, especially in my industry, it's all about traceability. And the big buzz today is cryptocurrencies. The big buzz is blockchain. But blockchain, the underlying blockchain, is what runs the cryptocurrencies. For example, Bitcoin is not blockchain, and blockchain is not Bitcoin. Bitcoin blockchain allows Bitcoin to be the currency itself. So in our industry, matter of fact, about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, I started another business called Ag Tracer, agtracer.com. And basically what it is, it's a blockchain company that allows consumers to trace from the source all the way to the store shelf that consumable product. So if we're putting anything in our body, especially today where there's a lot of imports from overseas that you really don't know the growing practices, we don't know how it's harvested, we don't know how it's maintained, with blockchain immutable technology, that is one area that we're looking into. And we're currently in proof of concept, even though we're 1.5 years out from creating it. We're still in proof of concept with my company, so folks can say, they can take their phone, they can take one of my products, hit the QR code, and it'll say when each one of those ingredients, trace it all the way back to the source. Number two, when it was jarred. Number two, number three, when it got to the wholesaler. Number four, when it got to the store shelf. And then they have all that information right at their fingertips. So in my niche, a consumable, traceability is very, very important from that standpoint.
Absolutely. I think everybody's heard of Bitcoin at this point. People know they've heard blockchain, but they don't really know what it is. Now, the blockchain general ledgers are a fantastic way of storing value and transacting value, but the traceability inside the blockchain of where a thing was at a certain point in time is phenomenal, right? So you can go, it's all open, you can go back and see. So I think you could have literally you could take that concept and go even further, and in the blockchain you can see what route it took on the highways from one warehouse to the next warehouse, right? I have a daughter that has a fatal tree nut allergy, and it is vital that we don't get cross-contaminated food from her, right? So having a better knowledge of where all those ingredients came from and triggers and alerts would be phenomenal, right? And I think this kind of technology will save lives at minimum on the food allergy section, plus all kinds of other issues for tracking back bacteria load, right? Because that's the problem was what they're looking for now with this trackability. If a pig farm came out and gave a whole community some kind of bacteria, they want to be able to track that back, and not to punish the person, hopefully, but to keep that thing from happening in the future. So I think it's awesome that you think that blockchain is going to help change your industry in the future, because I think blockchain is going to change every single industry on the planet over the next 10 years, right? And I don't think that enough businesses are taking it seriously at this point. I think virtual reality, blockchain, NFT tokens, all of those things are at the forefront. This really feels like 1998 internet to me. So this is internet 3.0 now. 2.0 is kind of lackluster, in my opinion. But so I think that's fantastic insights. If you're at the front of your company and you don't know anything about blockchain, I would recommend jumping into it. And I know that we're considering kicking up another playlist of just blockchain cryptocurrency stuff, because it is one of my side hobbies for sure, and hobbies I maybe spend 10 hours a week on cryptocurrency studying. But fantastic. Before we get out of here, do you have any other things, tips, tricks that you'd like to leave to our audience?
I think the biggest thing is cash is king. I mean, cash flow is king, and cash flow solves all issues of business. So first and foremost, of course, you have to think about product. You have to think about all the other trials and tribulations of running a business, but cash flow is king. And a quick example, if I could, Ken, one way that we have cash flow for our business is being in a food business, as we mentioned earlier, everybody wants to taste your product. And when we started, which we still do today with COVID, we don't because it kind of gave it a huge hiccup. But basically what we did is we went to the local street fairs. Again, we thought outside the box and say, hey, how can we get our product in front of as many people as possible, number one, get them to sample it, number two, and number three, have them give us cash or credit card. But basically getting in front of going to a street fair, a 2 or 3 day street fair that had 30, 40,000 people, that allowed us to set up a 10 by 10 tent, sample our products, number one. Number two, get instant feedback, which we actually did change recipes, getting feedback too spicy, not spicy enough, too sugary, too sweet, not sweet enough. And that's how we kind of honed in some of our products, that instant feedback. And then number three, if they like it, they buy it. So basically, I'd look at cash is king no matter what business that you're in. Think a little bit outside of the box and say, okay, how can I do that? If you have a technology company, for example, maybe you can offer monthly residuals, monthly subscriptions, number one. Number two, write a book on your expertise and sell it on Amazon. The book's not going to make you rich, but if it brings in $200, $300, $400 a month, that's cash flow. So focus on cash flow. Cash is king because money solves all problems in business.
Absolutely. Money and sales, right? That's how you get them. So, and I would argue that even before the cash is important, attention, I think, is more important than cash. Because if you can't get somebody's attention, you can't get their cash, right? It'll never happen. So the street fairs, the awards, all of those things are how you get their attention. And that's how that first transaction takes place, right? The other thing that you said was to write a book. And if you do write a book, my advice would be to make it super cheap, right? Make sure that you're providing way more value in that book than you're getting. So I would do like 99 cents on Amazon even, just to make sure that it's getting out there so you can be an industry leader. You will sell more of your products and services by giving that book away than you would by selling that book, even the 200 or 300. But you're right. If you don't have any cash flow, get as much of it as you can. And the way to do that is to get their attention first. You got to create value, get their attention, and then from there, everything gets pretty simple. All right?
That's correct.
So, fantastic. That's it for today's show, folks. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, my name is Ken. If you want to join my text line community, 314-370-2871. Send me a text message. You can simply say hi or ask me any question you want about business or technology, and I'll give you just an open, honest answer. No sales pitch, no nothing. I'll just give you my opinion. So that's it for today, folks. Get to work.